Good afternoon,
Good
everyone.
afternoon, everyone. We've been just chatting with ourselves for the
Yeah.
last 20 seconds or so. Good afternoon. Excited to see you. We have baby Elijah with us, sleeping happily.
Mhm.
We've successfully completed several webinars carrying babies before, so we're hoping for another successful baby wearing webinar today.
Absolutely. Hopefully, we don't have a crying baby, but we'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Excited to jump in. We're going to keep this one tight because it's over the lunch hour. So thank you to everyone who's joining us live, or if you're listening to the replay, we're going to try to get this one done in less than an hour. Very excited to share the culmination of our value add plan at Residence at Discovery Square, RDS for short. One of the largest assets in the entire Black Swan portfolio, half owned by Fund One and Fund Two, has really been a labor of love over the last about 18 months that we've had ownership of this asset. And we have some really exciting news to share about our recent appraisal and refi.
We sure do.
So let's get started. All right, here we go.
Should be able to see our slide deck there.
This is our beautiful lobby
Yeah.
of RDS, and you'll hear a little later in the presentation. This used to be just like an empty, like
We have a before photo. We'll show a
yeah,
little
we
bit
have
here. Yeah.
it was just like a white box space,
Yeah.
kind of what it might look like if you walked into like a large parking garage or something,
Yeah.
except it was the ground level of a Class A apartment building. And as you can imagine, that really hampered leasing, right? People are coming, they had photos of the units and those sorts of things. They were expecting kind of a more premium experience, and then they'd kind of walk in through the main door, and it was almost sort of uncanny. It's like, well, how do I get my car in here? Oh, this isn't the parking garage. Oh, interesting. And so this build out was part of our value add plan, and we have lots of kind of premium but cozy seating areas throughout that main level now, kind of what you might find in like an upscale hotel where people can congregate in little groups. And we have the seating area around the fireplace. We have some taller tables, some other things. So that's the
There's
first.
that beautiful swan art.
Yeah.
There's like wall decals with little swan feathers down the hallways, and our facility team has just done a phenomenal job, kind of making the place look and feel beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's jump in.
Just a quick announcement that we still have a little bit of room left in Fund 4. We've got maybe 1 to 2 million of room left. I expect that to close here probably in the next 30 to 45 days, somewhere in that territory. We're set to close on Boulder Ridge. That'll be the final acquisition in Fund 4. And when you see these outcomes for RDS that are owned by Fund 1 and Fund 2, hopefully you see the incredible value that we're able to create that I expect great things for in Fund 4 as well. Go to blackswanfund4.com. Also, I will be driving a cross-country moving truck later this afternoon and all day tomorrow. So if you want to give me a call, you can give me a call. Rachel can put my number to chat or something like that. I will be wide open for phone calls for about 16 hours. So make the most use of everyone's valuable time here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's jump into RDS. So to give you the backstory of RDS, again, the full name of this asset is Residence at Discovery Square. This is in the Discovery Square zone of the Destination Medical Center plan for the overall city of Rochester. We acquired this asset in April of 2023. Really the story started like 6 months or so before that when we got it under contract in late 2022. It had such favorable fixed rate debt. You can see the second to the last bullet point there. It had fixed rate debt at 2.8% that lasted through October of 2024. And so as part of the acquisition, we wanted to also acquire that debt. And it took about 6 months of working with all of the various banks that held small pieces of debt on this asset. That's called participating banks. When an asset gets large enough, usually one bank doesn't carry the whole mortgage. Many banks will participate in that mortgage. And so Nick spent about 6 months wining and dining all of those bankers and helping them to see why it was a win-win deal for everyone. And then we officially got approval and we closed on this in April of 2023. This was the largest residential real estate transaction in the state of Minnesota for 2023. We didn't find that out until like a couple days later. It was actually in the paper, and we're like, oh, that's pretty neat.
It's like a national publication thing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was fun. Very large. You can see in the picture there, it's an entire city block, right? Look at the left, look at the right. Those are the city streets. So it's an entire city block Class A, urban core, mixed use, the ground floor level. That's really the story of this asset. But when we acquired it, the ground floor level was intended to be all commercial space, about 30,000 square feet of commercial space, except it was completely empty. So the asset came online in 2019, right before COVID happened. And so the intent was always for those upper levels to be premium residential apartment units, and for that ground floor level to be things like maybe like a pizzeria or a coffee shop or a nail salon or just kind of other small businesses taking up that commercial space. Of course, through 2020, that changed the plan for this building and countless others across the entire United States. So when we acquired it in April of 2023, that entire ground floor, 30,000 square feet of space was still completely empty. So that not only was it just, wasted space, but it was bringing down the feel of the community for the residential units above, because like I said, you kind of walked into it and it's sort of, you kind of were walking into like an empty like parking garage is what it looked like. So that was our value add plan, and we're going to talk through that during our time here. We acquired this asset for $27 million. A really interesting acquisition process. As I mentioned, we, worked with the seller and the multiple bankers involved for about 6 months before we actually, met at the closing table. And that was because we inherited the debt. So we had fixed rate debt at 2.8%, which was a huge deal. Because if you remember in
It's
late
like 9% debt, is our next best opportunity there.
Yeah, if you remember in late 2022, early 2023, that's when rates had really run. So, 2.8 was always good, but it was extra good in April of 2023 because rates had gone up so much. We acquired it using a contract for deed, which means the seller carried a portion of the purchase price. He carried 5.3 million with no interest and no payments until that first mortgage matured in October of 2024. So we were able to acquire this, luxury, very large Class A brand new building for Fund One and Fund Two, $27 million purchase price with only 3 million down. So $1.5 million came from Fund One, $1.5 million came from Fund Two. That's staggering to be able to get that much asset value with that little capital. And that's a big part of the reason why the total asset value in both Fund One and Fund Two is so large in relation to the amount of capital that's in both of those funds.
Our next best opportunity was to bring about 12 or 13 million down, which obviously reduces the rate of return you can achieve by 75%. So just incredible that we're able to buy this building for such an extraordinary low down payment with such an extraordinarily low interest rate, but only for a short span of time.
That's right. That's right. So April of 2023 and October of 2024 are not that far apart, my friends. So it has been quite the sprint for the last 18 months. So that's the backstory. Maybe you've already heard that if you're a participant of Fund One or Fund Two, you've been coming to our webinars, coming to our quarterly updates. That's the backstory. And let's share about why we're doing this pop-up webinar today.
Yeah. So, setting the stage, we had to add massive, massive, massive value to this asset in just an 18-month period, because when that contract for deed expired, we could be back in the same situation we were, starting in, where we would have needed to bring, 12 or 13 million down, which means we would have needed to do like a $10 million cash in refinance, which we certainly would want to avoid doing. There was massive value add opportunities with this asset. We saw all these upside potentials, but we had to do it in an incredibly short span of time. And the goal really was to avoid, having to bring a lot of money to get new permanent financing in place in the end of October 2024. So last week, and last
we
week
closed on Halloween.
That's right.
We took that 2.8% all the way to the finish line.
Yes.
Like every day of 2.8% is a good day.
At the end of the day, we only had to bring about 300,000 cash to close. And kind of like when you buy a single family home or refinance a single family home, you can skip a payment on when you get new debt. And our new payment, the skip it's going to add up to about 300,000. So by mid-December, I'm going to say that it was a cash neutral finance event. I'm going to give myself a spiritual win, even though we did need to bring about 300,000 cash to close. And the neat thing about getting financing on a property is when you do that, you need to get an appraisal. So we have an appraisal. Wait, before we have a reveal, put in the chat, how much do you think this building appraised for? So we bought it for 27 million. We spent 3 million on our value add, so we're 30 million all in. how much do you think the building may be appraised for with the data that you have available to you right now?
We'd love to.
45 million.
45. All right, we have a 45 on the board. What else do we have?
It's lower than that.
We have a 35.
That's a pretty good guess.
Couple more.
Mm-hmm.
35.
35. Pretty good guess. 40 million. 42. We need to get these people appraising our buildings here.
We do, yeah.
Yes.
If y'all want a job as appraisers, come on out.
All right, so drum roll, Mark, yes, 36.
33. All right.
33.
Here we go.
Drum roll.
So Nick knew about the appraisal for like a solid 10 minutes before I knew. And I don't even remember now what Rachel and I were talking about. But Rachel and I were having a very mundane conversation, probably about like what email to go out next week or something like that. And Nick's just standing there in the hallway. And then I like turn around. I'm like, hey, did you have something you wanted to tell us or something? Mm-hmm. And he's like, I have the appraisal in hand. And when he told me, I literally sort of like shouted, I guess is what
we should have Facebook Lived it or something like that. Yeah. Here's a little drum roll.
I think I jumped up and down. Ready?
Yeah.
All right.
$36 million. Wow, that we just right on sync. That's good.
We spend a lot of time together.
That's right. So it is the official conclusion of the collateral department at Bremer Bank via certified appraisal from Integra Realty Eric T. Nickelmore that the Residence Discovery Square is worth $36 million, which is $6 million more than we pay than we have all into the asset after just an 18-month time span. So unbelievably successful. And you can see our value projection from our slide deck that we did back in April 2023 that many of you maybe saw, as we thought that when we were done with our value add plan, it would hopefully be worth 35 to 37 million. And we split the difference. So I could not be more happy with this outcome here. Appraisals today, you never know, like the commercial real estate market is going up, going down. There's dead on comps that could cause this building to appraise for 40 million. There's appraisals that could cause it to appraise for 30 million. And I'm very glad that we, the appraiser came up with a number that we thought might be a reasonable number. So what does this mean? I think we might be cutting off.
Yeah, the pictures are covering up that one sentence there, but this is just the numbers all on one slide. So we just kind of went over this verbally. So we acquired the asset in April of 2023, $27 million purchase price, took $3 million of cash to acquire that. I explained in that first slide how the rest of the financing worked. We put an additional $3 million of cash for construction of the new units on that ground floor level. So we got approval from the city to convert a substantial portion of that empty commercial space into residential space. And that was the bulk of our value add plan. So all in, we're at about 30 million between all of the loans, the cash that we put in, and then the cash for construction. And then we have our appraisal in hand of 36 million of our appraised value. So we essentially, we have 6 million in the deal, 3 million down, 3 million for construction. And then we've essentially doubled our money. So we created $6 million of equity in about 18 months against $6 million of cash investment from Fund 1 and Fund 2 that went into the asset.
Yeah, Shahari asked a great question. What's the new interest rate? We don't have a slide on that, but we got what's called an interest rate swap. Without getting too deep into the weeds, what that means is you can go to like financial analysts and capital markets, and they have all these charts that say, we think that interest rates will go down over the next 3 years. And what we did is we purchased a variable rate loan, and then we swapped it. We traded it for someone who wanted to get some variable rate exposure because they think that rates will go down over the next several years. And in exchange, we get a fixed rate today. What that means is our variable rate debt would be something like 8.5%, somewhere in that territory, but our fixed rate debt 6.5%. So an extremely favorable fixed rate for the next 3 years, basically, trading with someone else who thinks that, interest rates will go down over the next 3 years, which is like a pretty good assumption, but we're just hopelessly conservative people. Mm-hmm. So we would way rather take that fixed rate today and be the counterparty in that trade that maybe loses a little bit, but have safety and security for our investors. And the banks like that too. So they gave us like a little bit more favorable loan terms in some other areas too, because we were willing to take that fixed rate debt. So 6.5%, which is a really, really great interest rate to get in the current lending environment. We even kind of got lucky in if we pull up an interest rate chart on like 5-year treasury and stuff, like we nailed it. I'm not saying we're geniuses or something like that, but we got a really, really, really favorable loan on this refinance.
Absolutely. So let's talk about what this means, right? So you've heard some of the raw numbers, how much cash we have in the deal, what our appraisal is. Let's talk about what this means in terms of returns.
Yeah. So if we were to hypothetically sell that asset today for the appraised value, that would calculate out to be like a 70% IIR or AAR, internal rate of return or average annual return, a staggering rate of return. Fund one and Fund two today has $14 million of equity in that one asset. $14 million because we have a $22 million loan and we have an appraisal in hand for $36 million. If we were to, again, hypothetically sell that asset, which we're not doing because we really like this asset and we see an incredible, incredible future runway for this asset as the area around it continues to develop. If we were to sell today, that would be enough cash distributions to return 2/3 of the capital in Fund One. And that would be in addition to the distributions that have already been paid out in Fund One. I think we're at 16% or something like that. So that would be like most of people's capital back in Fund One and a quarter of all the capital in Fund Two, which is a massive fund. So just trying to make this like very understandable for everyone, just the staggering amount of wealth that's been created in a tiny amount of time on this asset. Like it's sometimes possible to have outcomes like this on like a $3 million apartment building, but a $36 million apartment building, that's a big ship to turn really quickly. There were days when there would be, a dozen of our staff members on site just doing things. And that's not including there might be 20 or 30 construction workers on site. Just an amazing amount of effort. Can't thank the team enough for everyone's, extraordinarily hard work to achieve this incredible outcome in such a tiny span of time. So hopefully everyone's excited to see numbers like these because these are crazy numbers to see and at a tough time in the industry, right? Like the wind is not at our back here. If interest rates came down a couple of points, like this could be a 150% IRR deal or something like that. So nothing went in our favor from like an interest rate perspective, and we still achieved this absolutely incredible outcome.
So let's talk about how we did it. So in the remaining slides, we're going to talk about what our value add plan was, both what we predicted when we were under contract and when we closed, and then what our outcomes were. So first up, the big thing was adding those additional units, right? So if you kind of think about it, just like very simplistically, right? Even if you have no understanding of real estate, about a quarter of the building was empty. Let's say 20%. 20% of the building was empty. So it kind of intuitively makes sense that if you can improve the value of, let's say, 20% of the building by making it units, that would improve the value of the asset about 20%. It's not that simple, but we're always sort of testing our minds in, lots of different ways of thinking about it from a qualitative perspective, from a quantitative perspective, thinking about it very, very simply, thinking about it in a more, complicated fashion. So that the big value add plan was knowing that there was this beautiful, brand new gleaming building and one entire floor was essentially blight. So what could we do to add value to that floor that would increase the value of the entire building? So we got approval to add residential units. We worked with a local construction firm that was really confident that they could get it done in a very short period of time. Took about 9 months to from the start of when the construction crews came on until when they finished the project. Our projected construction cost was about $100,000 per unit, and our projected unit value was about $225,000 per unit. So that told us there that there's probably a reason to do this, that would increase the value of the building enough. And then our profit there would be $125,000, and that was projected equity creation of $3.1 million. So let's share how we actually did.
See how we did. Compare our projections to actuals. So unfortunately, we only obtained approvals for 21 units, not 25. We knew that we weren't sure how many units the city was going to approve. So ultimately, I think they were reasonable to work with and gave us like a pretty good outcome overall. We had projected construction cost of $100K per unit, which there was some thought that went into that. It wasn't, 100K is a suspiciously round number. So it wasn't that we were like, yeah, I think it's 100K. We got multiple contractors. We got 3 different contractors to do very detailed bids and plans and stuff like that. And these were like insanely complex units to build out. I mean, I personally spent more time on building out these 21 units than I spent on building 85 units at Stonehaven Townhomes because they're just such complex units.
Hmm.
So our actual construction cost 105,000 a unit, only 5% more than our projection. I am unbelievably proud of that. I can't believe that we got that close to budget on such complex units. Our projected value per unit, 225 per unit. On the appraisal, we're at 240 a unit. So even though we had projected, 5K less in terms of our construction budget, we had conservatively projected that end value, and we ended up 15K higher in terms of value. So on average, instead of profiting 125K per unit, we profited 135K per unit. But we had 4 units fewer than we had hoped. So we had projected to create about 3.1 million in equity. We created 2.84 million in equity in 18 months on building out these like really unique, beautiful, just cool units, and taking this, frankly, urban blight, and turning it into something that's incredibly valuable and fun, and I think is just a huge uplift to the building. So
Yeah, there's
yeah,
definitely just like a buzz in the building
yeah.
for many, many, many months. Next up in our value add plan is the TIF and the master lease. So TIF is tax incremental financing. That's what TIF stands for. And it's essentially subsidies that local governments will give to developers in order to encourage development. So this building, it was, already constructed when we acquired it, and the seller had worked with the city to get a TIF package, and that TIF package is $100,000 per year that the building receives from the government. And then there are some constraints on that, right? Because the city gives developers that money in exchange for meeting the needs of the city. So what those requirements are is that 20% of the units must be leased at 60% area median income or lower. However, we're allowed to rent to students, and that's a very desirable tenant demographic. So we have a master lease with the University of Minnesota Rochester, which is one of only 2 4-year colleges in the entire country that has been created since the year 2000. We learned that earlier this year. I thought that was pretty interesting. Very vibrant, growing campus. And so they have a lot of need for student housing. And so they have a master lease on this building, and it's extremely favorable because it allows us to meet our TIF requirements. It's a very favorable tenant demographic. The university pays all of the turnover costs. It's just like a well-oiled machine, right? The students all move in at the same time, they all move out at the same time, and then there's zero vacancy. So about 20% of our building we have zero vacancy on for many, many years. However, the scary thing was this lease was originally scheduled to terminate in 2024.
In August of 2024.
Yes.
No joke. Like 2 months before our financing expires, a third of the building spontaneously vacates.
Yes. So this could have been like the end of the deal. So as soon as we closed, Nick immediately started building with relationships with the University of Minnesota, and they renewed their lease until 2026. We have a great relationship with them. I think we understand each other very well. They understand that we're a young, growing company. We understand that they're a young, growing university. We understand that they have, massive housing needs, and that their housing needs that they have today may be a little different than what they have, say, 3 or 5 years from now as they, build some of their own housing. So we restructured that lease, and that the lease now expires in 2026. It's very likely that it will continue beyond that. Who knows? But I think if we, had the opportunity to renew it today, we would, because it's been such a mutually beneficial relationship. And then as a part of that, we reduced the unit count from 1/3 to 1/4 of the building. And so it's kind of this unique win-win situation where we love having these units because of the no vacancy, the no turnover costs, only having one lease for a large number of units, that's those sorts of things. But we are able to rent these units on the market a little bit higher. Now we have additional complexity associated with that, right? All of the marketing that has to go into it, the turnover, all of those things. So it's a win-win situation that we were able to extend the lease, bring it down a little bit to just a quarter of the building, and to remove what would have been a very significant barrier to this refinance event this fall had this lease expired this summer.
Yeah.
And we were able to get all of this done within the first probably like 6 weeks of ownership. So we didn't have this like fearful event kind of hanging over us. This was one of the very first things we did, was meet with University of Minnesota and say, what do we need to do to extend this lease beyond 2024?
Yeah, I suspect that this was probably there are many forms of distress this asset was experiencing when we bought it. I suspect this was the most acute form of distress that the seller was aware hadn't exactly disclosed, but was aware that this, you know, very, very poorly timed, lease termination was coming up, and there was this kind of ticking time bomb with their in-place note. And so we were able to get the ship turned around, yeah, within like 6 weeks of closing, and that was just a massive win.
Yeah. One of the this is small town living. One of the main decision makers on this lease is the best friend of our neighbor. So we would see our neighbor. She's an older lady. She has no children. We're very different. Like our kids wave to her. She has dogs, all the things. And her best friend, who's often visiting her there, is the one who made the decision on this lease. Like small town living is just so fun.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Northwest parcel that was part of our value add plan.
So this lower image here, you can see that white house in a box. When we bought this Northwest parcel did not come with the transaction, which it's not great if you don't own the entire city block when your building is an entire city block. This was a holdout, so they bought the property for like I think $365,000. I don't remember the exact number, and then they offered to flip that property to the developer, the seller of RDS, for $1 million. So they're being pretty aggressive, and the seller offered them $800,000. They turned it down, and ultimately the seller, the developer, decided to re-architect the building around their parcel, and so now their structure, not super favorable to own that structure that's like a little, kind of missing tooth in a development for the indefinite future. We approached them, and while we were under contract on RDS, we approached the owner of this property, who happened to have the same attorney that we did, small town living, and said, "Hey, you guys messed up. You should have taken the 800 grand. We will never give you a penny more than you paid for it. You should take this offer right now, or this offer is going to go away, and we'll offer you less in the future." So we were just as aggressive with them as they had been with the previous owner of RDS. And then we got them to carry a portion of that, even that's personally guaranteed by Elaine and I. So we have very favorable terms on this property. It's been leased as a long-term rental, like pretty successfully. And at some point here, we'll probably convert it to a short-term rental, since the short-term rentals have been pretty successful at RDS. I think this would do well. So we now own the whole city block. And in fact, this structure is not included in that $36 million appraisal. It's explicitly excluded. There's so many upside potentials. So let's say hypothetically we could get Chick-fil-A into the vacant north commercial space. We're going after Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, other kind of Class A plus tenants.
If any of you have connections to those players, please let us know.
We would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Those operations require like a very significant pedestrian and car, like mega drive-through, to be kind of a viable enterprise these days. And so this would be the perfect location for like that mega drive-through to go off of a store that's anchored in that north commercial space. So it's just an insane win. It's difficult to quantify. I mean, it's got to be worth at least $1 million for us to be, owners of the whole block. And then this thing has actually cash flowed pretty well as a long-term rental. I've been surprised at how successful it's been financially since we bought it. And it's actually probably going to be pretty successful as a short-term rental. We accidentally made money at this.
Yeah, so I'd say, probably the whole city block is like 36.5 million, because that home there was not included in the appraisal. Yep. And then we have the Southwest parcel. So you can see here in this picture, this was what it looked like when we acquired it, inside of that red box. So the Southwest parcel was just kind of a gravel lot with kind of some grass overgrown. It technically was not allowed to be used for parking. People would sometimes park there, but technically at any time the city had the right to come in and ticket those people. It was not officially approved for parking, but it made the most sense for it to be a parking lot. And so we worked with the city, grueling process to get approval. It took 18 months to get approval, all sorts of things around stormwater and drainage and environmental concerns and bike parking and all sorts of things. Got all of that approved. Only $70,000 to put in this parking lot. It eliminated that just, quite frankly, very ugly gravel lot on the side of our building. It added 19 parking stalls. Those stalls rent for about $100 per month. So there's about a 3-year payback period. And at a 5 cap, the parking lot adds about $450,000 of asset value. And it also just looks amazing, right? Yeah. If you look at that lower picture, there's the black that's on the side of the building, and then the black of the parking lot. And it looks like perfect eyeliner. Like it's just so perfect. It makes the whole building, look the way it should look. And so very excited about that. And it makes it, way easier for our residents, for our short-term guests to have not only the underground parking that's available and the street parking that's available, but to have these extra 19 parking stalls is huge in an urban core area.
Yep. It was so comical when we bought this thing. Like, this is the main entrance to RDS in that lower photo there. And you look to your left and there's this like crazy unkempt duplex. And you look to your right and there's this like vacant lot with trucks haphazardly parked there. And you see this beautiful Class A building, and you're like, what's going on here? And you walk in the front door, and it's like all white box commercial space. And it's like, am I walking into some sort of horror movie?
Yeah.
Like, it was just
it was
zany.
a weird feeling.
Yeah.
Sure.
And now
Yeah.
and now we own the whole city block. The whole block is developed. The duplex is cleaned up. And when you walk in, you get this glorious, first impression. So of course, we're doing way better in terms of leasing performance of the building.
Yep. Excellent question came in.
That's a good question.
Is the Northwest parcel owned by Fund Two? So the Northwest parcel and the Southwest parcel are both owned by RDS Asset Management, which is the entity that owns all of this. And then that entity is half owned by Fund One and half owned by Fund Two. Yep. Very good question. Next up is our amenity build out.
So you can't win them all. This is a proposal. We have full architect drafted plans, everything. So everything on the right side of this image would be a world-class fitness center, gaming lounge, a kitchen that could like seat 32 people, kind of like a cafe, a golf simulator, a theater, a library, a conference center, like just an orgy of amenities here. Unfortunately, the city rejected this proposal. They want to see that commercial space activated with a commercial tenant. It's tough leasing urban core commercial space these days. Some municipalities have like a 70% vacancy rate right now on Class A urban core commercial space. So we're just kind of in a standoff with the city. We're going to keep going back, keep asking, and we're going to keep seeking out a commercial tenant to fill that space. This is a huge upside potential to the building. We've had the building for 18 months and we've not filled the space. I am optimistic that we'll activate this space one way or another in the next 3 years before our current financing expires, which is just it's additional upside potential when we get to that cash out refinance event here in 3 years.
Absolutely. Next up is expense reduction. So, kind of long story short, with commercial real estate, the way that you increase the value is by increasing the net operating income. We probably should have started with this, but we'll give you the little lesson now. So net operating income is all of your income minus all of your expenses. And then that multiplied by the cap rate is what yields the value of commercial real estate. So everything that we've talked about so far was about adding income to the building, adding units that generate rent, adding the units from the house, the triplex next door that generates rent, adding the parking spaces that generates rent. So all of that is increasing the income of the building. And then the other side of net operating income is decreasing expenses. So this is how we did. This is what we projected, and then our actuals for expense reduction.
So we originally projected taxes of 525,000, and we thought we'd be able to get those reduced to 410,000. We've got a really great win-win relationship with the assessor. Most commercial real estate owners have a very kind of oppositional relationship with the assessor, trying to take all sorts of pseudo legal means to hide information from them and keep them out of the property. We literally invited the assessor in, had him do a tour, and we're like, hey, here's this horrible duplex and this blighted lot that the city won't let us do anything with, and this white box commercial space. What do you think this building is worth? And they're like, yeah, I think maybe we overshot the appraisal on this one. We got them to reduce the appraised value of the building by 25%, and that took effect like immediately after we purchased the building. We also overestimated how high the taxes would be in the first place. So we project, and you're always like projecting a year ahead, and it's a an estimate, and we try to be conservative our estimates. So we estimated taxes would be 525K. Turned out they're 457K. We thought we'd get them reduced from 525 to 410. We got them reduced from 457 to 384. So just a staggering improvement in our tax situation there. Insurance in place, the seller's insurance policy costs $61,000 per year. We have just an outstanding relationship with our insurance vendors, and we just put an insane amount of time and effort into negotiating high quality insurance at a very affordable price. And we thought we'd be able to cut it in half. I thought that was a pretty aggressive estimate. We actually had a quote in hand at 28,000 prior to closing. So we thought we'd cut it in half from 61K to 28K. After many subsequent rounds of negotiation and tweaks, we got it all the way down to $17,000. This is completely insane that we're able to get this from State Farm. It's very high quality insurance for a quarter of the cost of the seller's insurance. So ask anybody, what does it cost to insure a $36 million apartment building? And they'll probably tell you something like, $100,000 to get started, $150,000. And we have it insured for $17,000. We thought we'd be able to lower the utility expenses. At some point soon, I'm going to do a solo webinar for several hours on all the strategies we use to
If
reduce
you've ever
utility
seen the
expenses.
movie Beautiful Mind, where the main character has like all the data on the wall, that's Nick around utilities. He has like spreadsheets galore, has like multiple people on our team that are working on various parts of utility efficiency. I think he does it because he knows I'm the more like environmentally friendly of the two of us. Anytime we're like getting rid of cabinets or counters, he's like, just put it in the landfill. And I'm like, no, find someone that wants to take it. Give it to someone that will put it in their garage. So I think you do the utilities because it makes me very happy. And then it obviously has extreme expense reduction as well.
I can't make this up. So when we bought the building, it had all dumb thermostats in place. When we put in these like really, really high quality smart thermostats, I can personally control every thermostat in the portfolio if I choose. And we have a person who runs a front desk now at RDS, even at night. So it was 8 o'clock or 8:30 last night, and our front desk person was complaining that it was too cold in the lobby, and we had set it to heat to 68 degrees. In Minnesota, like that's a pretty normal temperature. You're like wearing a coat and stuff when you're coming and going, but our front desk person is not wearing a coat. And I said, okay, I'll bump it up to 70. So I tweaked the thermostat up 2 degrees. There's no way we're heating that lobby to 72 degrees in Minnesota. By the way, the heater has not run in that lobby in 2 days. So we get all these analytics, and it only ran for like 5 minutes to get the temperature up from 70 to 72. We do really thorough insulation. I have
Oh gosh.
I have an infrared camera so I can walk around our buildings and find leaks in the envelope that we can, fix insulation issues or whatever. So
Okay, that's another webinar.
we got the utilities down. We thought we'd go from 221 to 190. We got the utilities down on a trailing 12 basis to $169,000. This is just bananas that you'd be able to reduce expenses that much on a new building, right? This isn't like a 80-year-old building where we could do all like really aggressive efficiency things. This is literally just in tweaking thermostats, fixing a lot of things. And on that T12, by the way, we're still paying for like the gas meter and everything for all the units that were being under construction. So just staggering savings on utilities. We eliminated a Cintas contract for 10 grand. Like they were paying a vendor, owner was paying a vendor to have people come in and like refill the paper towel dispensers. Well, we have in-house facilities, which is unusual. We don't do vended cleaning services. So we can refill our own paper towel dispensers for like $100 a year, not $10,000 a year. We actually got into this crazy standoff with them where they refused to give us the keys to our own paper towel dispensers because we were firing them. And eventually we were able to refill our own paper towel dispensers.
Send Stephanie a love message. She's the one that deals with all of these
Oh
things.
man, so many stupid contracts we inherit. Another stupid contract we inherited with this building was the internet. That contract runs through October 25 of next year. When we renegotiate our internet, we will save $37,000 a year, which will add $600,000 of value to the building when we get that new contract in place. That's a year from now. So that's how we projected that we would reduce some of the expenses in the building, and that's how we actually reduce those expenses.
Awesome. So that's expense reduction. I have Rachel adding up the total of the pre and the post. So our total pre-expenses just for these items, this isn't all of the expenses, but this is where we honed in on our expense reduction plan, was 739,000. And after all of our expense reduction, we brought these expenses down to 570,000. So
not too shabby.
A very substantial expense reduction. And hopefully you're seeing the picture here of increasing value in the building, decreasing expenses that increases NOI, which then increases the overall asset value. Next up is the math on our rent growth. So someone had asked about what the occupancy was at the time that we acquired it and the time that we have it now. So the established rental units were doing pretty well, right? It was really most of the struggle in the building was on that ground floor. The established units were doing pretty well. We acquired this from a property management company where we've acquired many assets over, our career, and we tend to be able to push rents higher than they can because we have very sophisticated marketing. We're able to process our applications very quickly. We have a very large leasing team that can do showings like, pretty much on the spot. All sorts of reasons why we're able to push our rents a little higher.
One of those assets, by the way, is in Fund 4, blackswanfund4.com.
Yep, that's right. So the rents that we had at the time of acquisition 18 months ago, you can see them there for an alcove. We were at 1150. Today we're at 1250 for a one bed. We were at 1300. We're now at 1500 to 1600. And you can see there the two bed, two baths, and then garage parking. And then also we added surface parking, which didn't exist, right? We talked about that Southwest parcel. We've added internet service to the building, which is $60 per month. We've added a monthly utility, like building amenity fee for $80 per month, and then pet rent of $50 per month. So with all of those ancillary income streams combined, our rent growth is about 25% higher than just 18 months ago. So
Crazy.
really staggering, like that's a lot, period. Like
On
for
a huge building.
On a huge building, in a very short period of time, at a time when a lot of the massive run up of rent growth that came through, say, the pandemic, a lot of that had really simmered out by 2023. Most markets kind of went back to normal. Our rent growth in our entire portfolio combined, things that we've owned for a decade plus, things that we've recently acquired, is about 9% this year. So we've more than doubled that at RDS because of the value add plan, because of the marketing plan, because of that feeling of, when you pull up to the building and there's a weird, non-parking lot and you walk in and you feel like you're walking into a parking garage. Even if you go up to the unit and you absolutely love it, and these units are spectacular. Some of them have two balconies, like beautiful kitchens, tall ceilings, all the things. It just didn't have that premium feel that you would expect at a premium price. And now when you walk in and it feels like you're walking into like a luxury hotel, and there's multiple different seating areas around, and there's a person at the front desk, and the lighting is improved and the parking is beautiful, you have a very different feel. And so all of those things add up to rent growth. So it wasn't, the value add plan for this particular asset wasn't things like, putting in new counters or renovating the bathrooms or those sorts of things. Remember, this building was built in 2019. So the units themselves were in great shape. It was about increasing the feel of the building overall to be able to drive more premium rents that were commensurate with what the building should have been able to get in the first place.
Yep.
Short-term rentals.
Yeah. So, we've spent a lot of time talking about this, not going to belabor it, but we had a real conundrum here that our new units that we were building, they were coming online around May of this year. And we needed to fill those units, and we need to get a few months of revenue to give to the bank to close on our loan in October. And usually it takes, 60, 90 days to close on one of these loans, especially a huge loan of this size. So how the heck could we get these units online and producing peak revenue instantly? And one of our ideas was short-term rentals. We had not ever done short-term rentals before, but we saw this problem coming in advance, right? We saw that, a year ago we were going to have a problem, and what are different strategies we could try to solve that problem. So we started spinning up units. We went from one unit a year ago to 55 total units today, and we had this I call it a revenue slingshot. So we pre-purchased, pre-assembled furnishings for over 20 furnished rental units. We brought all these units online, got our certificate of occupancy on all of them in the same day. That's how certificates of occupancy work, unfortunately. And if they were long-term rentals, it would take months for us to successfully lease those. Typically, you offer free rent, concessions, discounts, free parking when you're doing that initial lease up, and then you kind of bump rents up in subsequent years. Well, short-term rentals, they produce peak revenue day one. And so we had 20 people there the day we got the certificate of occupancy. They were like just waiting at the starting line to start furnishing these units. And we had those units producing peak revenue within 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, there was guests in every single one of those units at the peak of the high season. We have a somewhat seasonal market here, and we produced enough revenue that we hit our refi target. Like we had 1, maybe 2 weeks to spare. Like we nailed that target, but only barely. So within just a couple of weeks, these furnished units were producing a third, 30% of the revenue for the entire building. So spectacular success with our revenue slingshot on short-term rentals.
And it was super fun. There were days when we had like every member of our team there. If you've come to a lot of our webinars, you've heard these stories. Like our accountants, everyone, they're like, I'm more of like a desk worker, and we're like, you can put dishes in a cabinet.
That's right.
You can wash wine glasses. Come on down. Yep. And it was a ton of fun. And
got some pizzas, and
just like if you've ever had like a home improvement project in your own home, the faster you can see the before and after, the more emotionally exciting it is.
Yep.
And it was so neat to go from, the empty units, they were constructed, but they were empty, to fully furnished, all of the, kitchenwares and bathroom and linens and all of those things within just a few days. It was such a fun time for the company.
So we talked about how we added value. We talked about how we reduced expenses. What did this add up to? So when we put together our initial pro formas on this property, which was going on, 2 years ago, we tweaked a few things, around the time of closing. But these are the numbers that we shared, with y'all, with our investors. In 2022, the seller financials were, 1.2 million of NOI, and we had projected that, taking over kind of partway into the year, without the new units, without, with getting, half of a year to execute a value add plan, we thought we might be able to get that up to like 1.485, almost 1.5 million in NOI. And then we thought, once we had all the new units online, once we had the parking lot built out, everything, we thought we might be able to get to 2 to 2.1 million, 2.089 million in NOI. So how do we do? If we look at our 2024 trailing 12 financials, so remember, we only have those new units for a part of that time, for less than 6 months. We only have that parking lot for probably 4 months or something like that. If we look at what's our actual trailing 12 NOI, $1.826 million. So we went from 1.2 million NOI to 1.8 million NOI in like a 12-month period, or even like a 9-month period, depending on how you want to think about that. And if we look at our pro forma for 2025, we're right now on track to hit 2.04 million in NOI. At the end of the day, this is a huge ship to turn really quickly through many different value add strategies, right? We had to project out, how much do you think we could grow, long-term rents, and, could we fill that commercial space? We did not assume that we could, and it's good because we didn't. How much do you think we could reduce expenses? And to move NOI on an asset this big, almost doubling NOI in an 18-month period is a staggering, achievement. And that we were able to get so close to our target. I couldn't be more proud of our team's outcome here. I mean, there are days I'd walk in, there'd be a dozen people just working hard, just adding value to the building in 10 different ways at once. And so we ended up, I'd say, nailing our pro forma. I'm actually pretty shocked that we, kind of hit the exact value and more or less the exact NOI that we expected to hit. We didn't even get there the way we expected. Like, we did not assume that the STRs were going to be part of that formula. We thought it was all LTR. But this is just the way we got there. But we ultimately hit the target. So could not be more excited with our outcomes here.
Awesome. Let's talk about how this impacts fund distributions.
So equity is the driver of real wealth creation in real estate. Cash flow is a defensive metric that helps you pay your loan, make sure you don't get foreclosed on, but equity is what makes you rich. And so we've had the privilege to create $6 million of wealth in this asset for investors in Fund 1 and Fund 2 in just an 18-month period. We were able to get a cash neutral refinance, so not a cash out refinance, but a cash neutral refinance. And what that means is we're going to be able to continue distributions in Fund 1 and start doing regular distributions in Fund 2. Very similar to what we've done in Fund 1. We've been kind of hoarding cash in case we had to put millions of dollars into that refinance event, just to be on the safe side. There's the old expression that banks love to lend money to people who don't need it, but the moment you need money, the bank does not want to lend to you. So we made sure we had a huge amount of liquidity in our back pocket just in case. And because we did that, we didn't end up needing it. Fund 1 has over $1 million in cash reserves right now, which is quite a bit for $11 million fund that's now quite mature. So we're very pleased with where we're at in terms of our cash position in Fund 1 and its ability to sustain distributions for the indefinite future. Fund 2 currently has 1.5 million in cash reserves, and we also have a cash out refi that's like imminently pending. We'll be sure to update you as soon as we get that appraisal in. Still waiting to receive that appraisal. I think it's a good one. We just got $750,000 in cash a couple weeks ago from a financing event at Riverview. The only real thing that we need to kind of spend money on in Fund 2 at this point is there's 8 more units out of the 63 units in the Riverview that we need to buy. And at that point, we'll be done kind of like deploying capital in Fund 2. And we feel very optimistic about our ability to sustain distributions for the indefinite future. At a time in the industry when capital calls are the norm, or just outright capital loss is the norm, I could not be more proud of the results that our team has been able to achieve here. Not only have we not lost money in any real estate deal we've ever done, we've never had a capital call. But on this particular deal, which is, it's the biggest deal in Fund One, Fund Two. It's the second biggest deal in the whole company. And on this massive deal, we're hitting 70 IRR. Like, those are crazy outcomes. Could not be more proud of what the team's been able to achieve here. There are so many people that made this happen. We need a much wider angle lens to get all of our short-term rental people, our construction guys, all of our PM staff. Like, sometimes there's like literally 6 different lease showings happening at once at this building, and it just incredible outcomes for the team. So, thanks to everyone. If there's any team members on this webinar here. And finally, we can talk about what's next at RDS.
And I'm really proud of you with all Nick
Thank
is
you.
like this he's like this like business mastermind. He like wakes up at midnight, and which is okay now because I have a baby, but when I was pregnant I was like, no Nick, we're sleeping, and he's like, no, I have this idea for this thing or that thing. And I'm just so proud of what you've been able to accomplish in a very short period of time, and I know you've put a lot of effort into this in the last 18 months, and it's been really amazing. So what's next for RDS? So we will have a cash out refi event in October of 2027. That's when the existing debt that we just acquired will terminate. Someone had asked a question about the swap. The question was, can you explain the swap in more detail? Why not get a fixed 6.5% rate loan? So a swap is a variable rate loan that you swap in exchange for a fixed rate loan. A fixed rate loan at 6.5% just does not exist in the market.
That's right.
The only way to get that low of an interest rate with a fixed instrument right now is to do what's called a swap mortgage. And so that's why we have that specific type of debt instrument on this, because we wanted fixed rate debt. We love fixed rate debt. We love knowing exactly what our debt service is going to be for the foreseeable future, exactly when that debt is going to mature, all of those things. So we exercised a swap. And if we could have gotten a normal fixed rate loan at 6.5%, we absolutely would have taken that. But just a typical fixed rate loan probably would have been more like 8.25%,
something like that.
8.5%, maybe.
Yeah. And we usually abhor complex financial instruments, but we did this swap with Bremer Bank, which is a regional bank. We have another swap with them right now that's working out great. And I'm totally okay with some person in Wall Street that wants to try to squeeze some return out of executing this swap with us, as long as we're still doing business with our regional bank, that's like our stakeholder in that exchange. So this allowed us to shave 1 to 2% off of the interest rate we'd otherwise be contemplating, which is going to save. I need to add it up, but save a staggering amount of money over the life of the loan with this somewhat clever financial arrangement that we put together.
So next up is really focusing on that commercial space. So leasing that out to a commercial tenant like Starbucks, those sorts of things, Target, something like that. That could add up to 170,000 per year based on the square footage that's leasable there, or just continue to work with the city to convert that commercial space to amenities like we described several slides back. We're working with some other like local business owners in that Discovery Square area to come up with some sort of amenity space that could be used by all of our residents and all of their employees and those sorts of things, and then just continuing to work with the city. So it is important to note that the city has the ability to approve or disapprove of our use of the commercial space because we have TIF on the building. So sometimes I'll get like all upset and I'm like, Nick, why aren't they approving our plans for changing this into amenity space? And he's like, well, Elaine, they're writing us a check for $100,000 per year. So essentially they're kind of renting that space in exchange for wanting to see it activated as commercial space for the city. So one way or another, we'll continue to work on that over the coming years. Continue to optimize our short-term rental unit mix. It's likely that we will unwind our main floor units, the ones that we built during this value add plan and then immediately converted into short-term rentals. It's actually more advantageous to have the residential units in the upper floors as our short-term rentals because those are all homogeneous. So in that main floor, that's what's called an adaptive reuse. So we were kind of working around what was already there of, oh, this unit will be this many square feet, and this unit will have windows here, and this unit will have the kitchen here, and those sorts of things. So they're all a little bit different. But really the plan that we've been exercising with our short-term rental plan is more of what you might find at like a Hilton or a Marriott, that all of the units are basically the same, because that allows us to minimize the vacancy in any of those units. So we'll unwind those main floor units, take those furnishings upstairs, and expand our 2-bed, 1-bath, and alcove units for our short-term rental unit mix there. And then just continue to keep our expenses expenses low. So continuing to work on utility efficiencies, taxes, insurance. Nick mentioned the plan that we have with cable and internet. So just continuing to think about how can we increase income, how can we decrease expenses so that we can continue to push NOI over time.
Yep. Don't forget that we've got the most popular event of the year coming up here on November 18, 19, 20. This is Elaine's Visioning, Gap Analysis, and Momentum event. You can go to blackswanteam.com/visioning. We get a staggering number of people that show up for this. People absolutely love this event. It's getting to be, kind of towards the end of the year. Like, what would you like the next year to look like? Because if you don't put some thought, some intention into what your next year is going to look like, and write it down, and get into a peak state, and share it with other people, it's not going to happen. I promise you that a year from now you will surely arrive. The question is where, and if you don't set at least a compass, like maybe you don't have a map, at least set a compass. You're not going to end up in a place that you like. So go register right now, blackswanteam.com/visioning. There's no cost whatsoever to this event. I think this is Elaine at her best.
My favorite time of the year.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic event. It's our most popular event of the year by a margin. We get 2 or 3 times more people show up for this event than any other event that we do. So go ahead and sign up right now, and plan your coming year. Like, what do you want that to look like? Set some intention, and just create a masterpiece of a life.
I really believe so much in the power of visioning. That's why I love to teach it, right? I hope you see here with RDS, like it's all a very tangible example of seeing the vision, literally walking into blighted commercial space and saying, what of value can we create here? And having to see it in our mind's eye, and then take it to an architect and say, hey, can you make some plans here? And then take it to a builder and say, hey, can you build this? And then take it to the city and say, hey, can we get approval for this? And then put it on short-term rental platforms to show people, hey, you can come, stay in these beautiful units when you're here in Rochester for medical care or whatever. It's all about seeing the future and believing in it, and then kind of working your way backwards. It's a muscle, it's a skill that can be honed, whether you've never done visioning and this is new to you. Come and I will teach you all the basics, exactly how to walk through this so that you leave this 3-part webinar with a plan in hand. Or if you've done visioning for a long time, come and be part of a community and have that energy. And the most important part about visioning is getting yourself into a peak state so that you can see all of the possibilities and you can believe in all of the futures. So super excited about this. Can't wait for it's only 11 days away, our very first day. So very excited about that. November 18th, 19th, and 20th. All of them are at 7 p.m. Central. Register, bring your friends. The replays will go out, but I encourage you to attend live because there's just something about that energy of casting your vision. And it's 2025. Like, I don't know about you, but something about that quarter century.
Yeah.
It feels important.
It's different.
Yeah. So that's our visioning workshops.
Yeah. And then just a call out there to blackswanfund4.com. As Elaine mentioned, that property management company that was managing RDS, they also managed Georgetown Homes, and we're already seeing the exact same outcomes at Georgetown that we've achieved at RDS. I think it's very likely that we will end up adding a similar delta in value in the next few years to Georgetown Homes, which is in blackswanfund4.com. And you can give me a call anytime in the next 2 days, and I'll pick up the phone. There are a couple questions. We don't have much time here, but so when will Fund 2 start distributions? We can probably do that
December 1st.
December 1st. Fantastic.
Yep.
Very exciting.
December 1st, and then starting in January 1st, we will do monthly distributions from both Fund 1 and Fund 2. Our PPMs technically call for quarterly distributions, but we're happy to process monthly distributions, which we've already been doing in Fund 1, and then we'll start that in Fund 2 starting in January.
Yeah. Eugene asked, can I call Nick about anything or just about Fund 4? You can call about whatever you want. You can also block time on my calendar if you want, but after about 3:30 today, and then anytime tomorrow Central, you can just give me a call. If you want to talk about your cat, whatever I can do to bring you value. Great question from Mark here. Would Starbucks lease increase NOI more, or would it be increased rents with an impressive amenity stack to improve NOI more? Great question. So we've actually turned down many tenants for this space because the commercial space is a relatively small piece of the building. So if we put like an indoor trampoline park there, it would kind of like pull down the building, right? So the most valuable thing we could do is bring something to that space that would like increase our rental rate or reduce our vacancy in the rest of the building or increase our, ADR for our short-term units. So that's why we're really swinging for the fences if we get a Starbucks in there. And then in terms of like appraised value, there is a material difference between a building with a Starbucks and a building that has some other tenant. It might lower your cap rate by like half a point. So that increases the multiple of your income. So honestly, if that space sits vacant for 5 years for us to get a Starbucks, like that's a trade that we're happy to take because that rent that we get from that tenant, it's meaningful. 170K a year in NOI would be great, but the delta it can have in terms of like your cap rate for the building or income for the rest of the building, that's everything. Very good question. Can you do a webinar on insurance strategy? Absolutely. Let's write that down. Rachel, let's do a webinar, I don't know, in a couple weeks. I think, I don't know what my calendar looks like, but we could do a pop-up webinar just like this on insurance or something like that. Great
And
question.
utilities, so you can
Yeah.
show off your.
Oh, yeah. Let's do a utilities webinar. That's great. And did I hear that the commercial space has been empty for 18 months? It has not been leased, but it has not been empty. So we use that commercial space. It's about 7,350 square feet of space. We use it as our like job site trailer to store construction materials. Then as the construction materials were all getting used up, we used it to store all the furniture for the short terms that got deployed. And now RDS is kind of like the center hub of our operations downtown. We've got like 6 staff members there at any given time. It's just such a beautiful building. And then that building gets all that attention, all that touch that's really driven out comes to that building. So the building's actually getting a huge amount of value out of that, kind of warehouse space or flex space, however you want to think about it. So we've gotten extreme value out of that space. However, if Starbucks wanted it, I'd be happy to give it up and give it to Starbucks.
Yeah. I mean, we would not have been able to do that rapid deployment of our short-term rentals without having that space. You used to walk into it and it kind of looked like, the part of IKEA where you go to pick up all the stuff. It was like all of our coffee pots and all of our pots and pans and all of our soaps and linens, just as far as the eye could see. And so we had all of that stuff ready and we had people in there assembling furniture and getting all of the, cardboard taken away and all of that. So that as soon as we had that certificate of occupancy, we just had to carry that stuff across the hall. So it's been extraordinarily valuable. If we hadn't had that space, I don't know how we could have pulled it off because we would have needed to store all that stuff in like a storage unit or something and then, bring it in by truck. So it's worked out well. But yeah, if any of you have any connections to, Starbucks or any, similar type commercial tenants, please let us know. We're working with all sorts of brokers and making phone calls and doing all sorts of things, but just have to get that one relationship.
Yeah. The broker that has brought all of the Starbucks to Rochester has the listing on that space right now. But there's other Class A, like I'd take a Caribou coffee or whatever we can get in there that would be a Class A plus tenant.
I think we nailed our timing. We are right at 3 minutes after the top of the hour. So I hope you enjoyed the webinar. I hope you enjoyed seeing, a value add plan from the post, right? So we do a lot of projections in the company. We talk a lot about this is our plan, this is how it's unfolding in our quarterly updates. But to have an appraisal in hand showing a 6 million improvement in the equity off of 6 million that was invested. So essentially a 100% return in about 18 months. I hope you enjoyed that. If you are a member of Fund 1 and Fund 2, enjoy, congratulate yourself on a phenomenal investment choice that you made at that time and enjoy the increase in your net worth that has happened. And if you want to be a part of this for Fund 4, blackswanfund4.com for the assets that we have in that fund. We'll see everyone for visioning workshops in less than 2 weeks.
See you then.
Bye, everyone. Bye, baby Elijah. He's sleeping. He did his job. He stayed asleep the whole time. Bye, everyone.